everyone, Miss Carrie here from Miss Carrie's Creations. Throughout the month of April, I have been a guest designer on the Coffee Loving Card Maker blog. Today I have a slimline coffee card with a window circle background. I'm going to show you how to create that card panel in Cricut Design Space using the position tool. Then I will show you how to create some bright spring flowers with your Distress Oxide inks. Let's head on into Cricut Design Space so that I can show you how to create the card panel for this slimline card. I'm going to be using the Windows version of Design Space today. This project can also be created using your mobile app. We are going to start by inserting a square shape and sizing it to 3.25 inches wide by 8.25 inches high. This is going to make it a little bit smaller than a standard size slimline card base and give us a little bit of room around the edges for a frame. The next step is to insert a circle shape. With the free version of Cricut Design Space, you have a simple circle shape. If you have the Access subscription, you also have a scalloped circle and a starburst circle shape. I'm just going to be using this simple circle shape for this card panel, but you can choose any of the circle shapes that you want to use for your design. We are going to need 3 circle shapes for this design. So I'm going to duplicate this shape twice to create the 3 circles I need. Now at this point, you can try to eyeball the placement of these 3 shapes in hopes that you get them lined up evenly. But I'm going to show you an easier way to do this by using the position and align tools to create evenly spaced circles. I'm going to click on that rectangular panel and I'm going to go over here to the top of the canvas and change the position of X to 0 and Y to 0. This is going to place my panel in the upper left-hand corner. Now I'm going to click on that top circle. The only position that I want to change is the Y position. This is going to be placed a ½ inch from the top of the card panel. So I'm going to go up to the position tool. I'm going to click on the number next to Y and I'm going to type 0.5 for ½ inch. Now I'm going to move that third circle into position. When you use the position tool, it will move the uppermost point of the image to the new position, just like it did with the top circle. We want the base of this circle to be a ½ inch from the base of the card, which would be 7 3/4 inches. So we're going to need to do a little bit of math to determine the position of this lower circle. The circle itself measures 2 inches. So I'm going to take the measurement 7 3/4 inches and subtract 2 inches from that. This means that my circle will need positioned at 5 3/4 inches or 5.75 on the y-axis. Now we are going to use our align tools to space these circles evenly. I'm going to hold down my Shift key, then I'm going to select each of the shapes over here in the Layers panel. I'm going to go up here to Align, and I'm going to click on Distribute Vertically. This is going to space those circles so that the measurement between each one of the circles is the same. Now I need to line up those circles over to the left, so I'm going to hit Align once again, and I'm going to go Align Left. So now all of my circles are perfectly aligned. I'm going to group these circles together since I know they are aligned perfectly. And now I'm going to hold down my Shift key one more time and I'm going to select that square shape. I'm going to go up to Align one more time and I'm going to choose Center Horizontally. And now my circles are perfectly centered and perfectly spaced on that rectangular card panel. The last thing I need to do is attach attach all of these images together so that those circles will cut out. Now I just need to hit Make It and cut this card panel out, and I'll show you how to assemble the rest of the card. I have cut the items that I'm going to need for this card. I have the front panel, some pattern paper circles, and some frames which were all cut with my Cricut machine. The pattern circles are cut at 2.5 inches so that they'll fit behind the windows. If you're not sure how to use the slice tool to create your little frames, I do have a 5-minute Cricut class video here on my channel. I'll put the link to that in the upper right corner of the screen. I also have this cute plaid paper I cut for the background and a fab-brew-lous background stamp that I'll be using on this panel. I am going to stamp the heat embossed background for this card and create this sentiment. Then I'll show you how to create some sweet little distress oxide flowers and assemble the card. I've brought over my stamping platform to stamp this background image. Since the background stamp is going to cover the entire front panel, I can't really use my magnets to hold it in place. Do you remember how I showed you that I use old Cricut mats for watercolor? Today I'm going to show you how I use them with my stamping platform. This mat still has a little bit of tack, but not enough to hold the material in place while I'm cutting with my Cricut. It does, however, do a really good job holding this card panel while I'm stamping. After placing that panel down on the sticky surface, I've laid down the stamp and then used the door of the platform to pick it up. This is going to be heat embossed, so I'm going to use this awesome new tool to apply some anti-static powder to my panel. This little cottontail powder tool delivers the powder through the nylon bristles onto the paper. I love how easily this stores and that it can be refilled. It also prevents any excess powder from getting all over my hands and my work surface. I'm going to be stamping my image with Distress Oxide ink, which will hold embossing powder. But I want to create a watercolor-like look, so I'm first adding a Distress Embossing ink with a dauber. I'm going to put a nice coat of ink on the stamp. After adding that thick layer of ink, I'm going to stamp the image, then I'm going to add the Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink and stamp the image once again. I'm carefully going to remove this card panel from the mat with a pair of tweezers. I don't want to touch any of those inked images before I apply the clear embossing powder. I usually skip this part of the video, but I know that some of you enjoy watching this process. So I'm going to speed up the video so that you can see those plastic beads melt and begin to rise up off the paper. You can see that some of those images are a little faded and distressed. This isn't because of the stamp. It's due to the fact that I used that thick layer of clear distressed ink under the Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink. I love how those two layers give it a worn, aged look. While I have my stamping items out, I'm going to go off camera and stamp my heat embossed sentiment. Then I'll show you how to create the flowers for this card. I'm going to be using Distress Oxide inks to create the coloring for the flowers. I've chosen Tattered Rose, Spun Sugar, Peeled Paint, Shabby Shutters, Speckled Egg, and Vintage Photo. I'm going to add these colors onto some white cardstock in sections. As I add the layers of ink, I'm mixing a few of the colors together. These areas are going to be used to create some more dimension in my flowers. I've also used 2 shades of green for the leaves and some Vintage Photo for the flower centers. To add some more dimension to these flowers, I'm going to take advantage of the ink's water reactive properties and splatter the sections with water and ink. I'm using a watercolor brush to splatter water droplets onto the sections. You can see right away how it starts to change the colors in the ink. Now I'm going to mask off the sections with some paper and add some ink splatter into each section. I've smooshed some ink onto my glass mat, which is another one of my favorite new craft room additions, and I'm going to splatter the ink into each area. The ink is going to add another layer of dimension to these panels. Adding water to the ink splatters is going to cause another reaction to the layers that are already there. Now that this is dried, you can see all of the fun layers of ink and splatter in each of the sections. I'm going to use some smaller floral and leaf dies to cut out some images, then I'll show you how to assemble the card. I've gone ahead and added the front panel and floral circles to the card. I've added a little bit of ink around the edges to create a distressed look, and I've popped the panel up on some foam tape. The blue circles are glued in place using liquid adhesive. For the sentiment, I heat embossed the phrase, "You mean so much to me," with 3 little coffee beans. This is going to be placed in the center circle with layers of flowers. Right now, I'm just laying out all of the flowers to determine how I want them to appear behind the sentiment. Once I've determined where I want them to go, I'm going to adhere the sentiment in the center with thick foam tape, then I will start to layer the flowers around it. When I cut out these flowers, I chose colors that matched the colors in the pattern paper, the cardstock frames, and the brown stamped images. I also added some white flowers to break up the colors and create a little bit of contrast. As I adhere the flowers around the sentiment, I'm trying to form visual triangles with the colors and the shapes. Once most of the flowers were in place, I started tucking in all of the leaf and vine shapes. I chose 2 colors for my leaves and vines so that I would get a little bit of contrast. I'm layering them under and over the flowers. I'm also placing a few leaves beneath the sentiment to make it look like some of the leaves grew underneath. I took another look at the design and decided that it needed a few more flowers, leaves, and vines to balance it all out. Then I chose some mini white pearls to place around the arrangements. Mini pearls have become my new favorite embellishment, and I'm having a really hard time finding them in other colors. If you have any suggestions, please let me know. Alright, let's take a look at the finished card. This is such a simple spring creation that shows my love of coffee and flowers. The panel for this card was created using the Cricut machine, then stamped with a coffee mug design. The sentiment is so sweet with the coffee beans and layers of flowers placed over those patterned paper circles. I'm going to share a few close-up photos of this card so that you can see those layers in a little bit more detail. This Slimline is such a unique design that you can create using just about any coffee background stamp and flower die you have in your collection. As a coffee addict and gardener, I would love to receive this card from another coffee-loving friend. I enjoyed being able to share this with all of the coffee-loving card makers today. If you have a chance, stop by the Coffee Loving Card Makers blog to see more fun coffee-loving projects. If you have any questions about this project or the supplies I used today, feel free to leave a comment below. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.